everybody to the Active and Flexible Learning Spaces panel discussion and the first IT Expo. My name is Melissa Stotz. I'm the Technical Support Services Manager in ITS, and along with me today is Dr. Tim Peterson of the College of Business, Ludwig Herrera, Creative Director of Distance and Continuing Education, and Robbie Loft, Student Body President. There has been a growing shift in pedagogy to embrace the many benefits that have been found in active learning. Learning space design has in turn embraced this shift in pedagogy and is designing the classrooms to enhance active learning by providing technology and furniture that promotes active learning. This is an exciting time at NDSU, and for this discussion with the new STEM building coming online, fall 2015, and it's in its pre-design phase. For those in the room interested in active learning who have not yet heard about the transformation of Dunbar 152, you're going to want to check that out. It is a room that was an existing lecture-style classroom that was transformed into like a scale-up classroom. There's 5 round tables, each one seating 9 students for a capacity of 45 students. And each table has a projector, so that the student groups can project their own content and work as a group, and then the instructor has the ability to broadcast any given projector to the whole room. The room is reserved through the Office of Registration and Records and is available to all departments. This is what it used to look like, just the standard lecture teaching style classroom, and this is what it looks like today. You can see, I guess, almost all 5 of the tables. Active learning means that learners are actively engaged in the learning process rather than passively absorbing lectures. An active learning space is one which includes collaborative technology and has furniture which facilitates active learning. This is an example of what an active learning classroom might look like. The main components I think of when I think of an active learning classroom are the tables for student group work and having a display available for each table, along with the ability for students to connect with their own electronic devices. And then another important concept is just the whiteboards for every student or for every group space. A flexible learning classroom is a large unformatted space for learning with furniture that can easily be configured. This picture illustrates the instructor teaching in a lecture style. Here's the same space, the same furniture, same class, and it was easily configured into a discussion format. Once again, the same space, same furniture, same class, and it was easily configured into group format. All right. I'm going to ask my panelists to step over to the hot seats, and there's a microphone on each chair. I did plan on Tim going first, Ludwig in the middle, and Robbie in 3rd place. Almost feels like the dating game. All right, Tim, tell us more about active learning spaces and flexible learning spaces in higher education and at NDSU.
Well, I guess I should be on first. Okay. Yes, this is wonderful. All right. Well, thank you for inviting me first. We have a number of course, obviously my love is Barry Hall. It's what I spent probably the first year of my life here at NDSU working on. And I'm going to talk about a piece of flexible. I think it's flexible. Okay, some people might not. If you ever come and look at our computer lab, one of our computer labs has what's called computer garages. And it allows us to put the computers away. The reason we created that was the faculty said to us, the computers distract students from the lecture. And yet I need to be in a room where they have access to computers. That's what they were describing to us, and they basically said, can you find a way to make them available when we want them and get rid of them when we don't want them? We came up with a piece of technology. In this case, it's a desk that allows the computer to drop down inside the desk. It folds down, and when it folds down, it basically means that now it's just a desktop. Since we created that, English 320, which all of our students have to take, they want to only teach in that room. We've moved most of the English 320 classes for our students down there because they like the fact that 2 days a week, as they describe it, they actually spend time lecture, writing on paper and stuff, but then that third day they bring up the computer, they basically type up everything they're doing and send it immediately to the student. That may not sound as flexible because those desks are permanently mounted on the floor, but it's made that room very flexible. In fact, we use it 3 or 4 different ways in any given week.
Thank you. Ludwig?
Is it on? I don't think this is on.
This.
Yeah, I can change it. And do you have the clicker?
Yep. Oh, you want it over here?
I don't know if. Okay. I think something that I wanted to allude before we go into my experience itself is that right now the current classroom that we have in almost any university is being faced by this type of news blogging and being addressed by the media, where there is a lot of concern about what we have been doing in classrooms. And there are several of these clips that actually are saying, let's redesign the classroom, let's redesign education and get rid of the classroom altogether. And I think that is something that can be very, impressive or have an impact in education. However, I'm going more into what today's workspaces look like. And this is what we're seeing out of a lot of organizations. Some of these organizations being big, we have Facebook, Google, Twitter, and SoundSpace here, but some of them are actually here in town. We have Atlassian, we have Insight Technologies, and so there are a lot of these places actually now taking place here in the area. So talking about NDSU classrooms, this is a classroom that we have distance and continuing education, and this is a really flexible space. The tables can move anywhere. It allows to have computers as well as actually different projection devices. And it also allows us, in this case, for a very complex setup. We actually have a lot of computer engineering being done in all those breadboards that you see. So just to kind of go a little bit here, you can see that the flexibility allows for those tables to be arranged into any position. And finally, right now we have with Idea Space, another group here in the university, very flexible arrangement. And something that we took to mind is the impact that color has also in the learning environment. So we know that definitely the colors have to be part of that, and that is what we are kind of going after, a lot of design and brainstorming to happen. So I think that's...
Robbie?
Yeah, well, I'm very happy to be here, kind of talk a little bit about the student perspective on a lot of these changes. And in a generation where each one of us can literally pull out our phone and find information that was previously took weeks or days or hours to find, students learn absolutely in a very, very different way. I remember my first class on campus was in Stevens Hall, a lecture of 400 students, and although that is necessary for everybody's education, I was in the mid to back, and you look and there's laptops everywhere. There's iPhones out, there's iPads, and everybody's interacting, and it's just a different function. And when students are not quite learning the exact same way that a lot of our professors have in the past. So when I think about my experience in active area, and I think of Berry Hall as well as person who's down there a lot for my economics major. And at the same time, I'm also a political science major, so I have a lot of classes on campus here, and there's some older classrooms. And I think of my experience in places where, like I said, Berry Hall, we can have those study spaces where you have an interactive screen where you can chit chat, you can move around tables, you can be more interactive where your professor's face to face. Or when I come to some of my larger general education classes where it's lecture, and you even see on test day, 400 seat area, there's people filling every single seat, but on a Monday at 9 a.m. it's not quite the same aspect when there's maybe 150 people to 350 people depending on the day. So I mean, it shows that you need to capture every student's attention, and it just takes a lot more now. It needs conversation based, it needs to be interactive. They need to have a place where they're working with students so that they can be engaged in different aspects. And I find that the different learning environments that are kind of developing, the new opportunities with the STEM building where we can make tremendous impact and positive growth in that area, it's just extremely beneficial for the student experience here on campus.
Thank you. All right, next question. How is the emergence of active and flexible learning spaces changing pedagogical techniques? Or on the other hand, how are new strategies for teaching and learning changing the way we think about learning spaces?
So can I ask a favor of you, since you now have the clicker? Can you go back to the picture that you showed just before the Dunbar room? Because I'm going to talk about that one. Actually, farther back, please. I'm going to use your picture. Those slides are mine, but I want to use this picture. Yes. I don't know about you, but I spend a lot of time reading about not just business, but how students learn. And this last summer, I was privileged enough to go to a Gallup education conference and heard Tony Wagner speak. And he was saying that he's identified what he considers some of the critical skills that students have to learn. Consistent with that, I have talked to over 350 recruiters, and some of those same skills are the ones that I've identified. The ability to communicate, solve problems, work on projects. By the way, the Gallup data says that if students work on a major project that lasts more than a couple of weeks, they are more engaged at work when they leave school. Not just more engaged at school, they're more engaged at work. By the way, all those things I just described to you can't be taught in straight rows. They have to be taught in this kind of facility. If they're going to work on a real project, then they have to have the facility, in other words, in this case, the technology and also the furniture that allows them to do that. This room looks very much like the brand new, and we call it 3 different things because depending upon what instructor you talk to, it gets a different name. My marketing instructors call this new room that we're getting ready to open, we hope, in January, a design room. I call it a problem-based learning room. And if you would go to business and you went to Motorola, they would call this a Six Sigma room. That's exactly the kind of room that they design. What's so important about this is the way people have to learn. They work on real problems. And we have to do that here in school because this is what they're going to experience when they go out to work. When we redesigned the library in Berry Hall, we redesigned it this way. We've got those little pods that people can get into little groups. There's that tall table where they can just sit and work. We've redesigned the library this way also because that's the kind of learning space they need.
Let's see. More. Okay, so I just want to do a little bit of paraphrasing on Loris Malaguzzi. There are 3 teachers of students: adults, other students, and their physical environment. That is an actual fact. The environment itself is part of that learning environment or part of the learning process. And when you go to a location nowadays and even before that is not stimulating, you will not be stimulated or not inspired to actually do a lot of learning. So This is an actual school, and this is the North Shore Country Day School. And just look at the facility. This facility is an actual middle school. And for us to be in a university setting and having maybe some of these students come to our university, how are they going to feel pedagogically and even in the environment itself when they came from this and we do not have environments like this in our university? That is, I think, something that it has to be molding some of this ever-changing process that we're having. This is another university, and this is the Adler School. And as you can see in Adler School, they have the same thing. And as you can see all around, more than anything, the pedagogy behind all of this is really putting the teacher, the instructor, the mentor at the same level with all the students. That will actually incite that kind of collaboration and back and forth conversation with any part of the learning process. So this is another part of the school, North Shore Country Day School. And here is also from the Third Teacher Plus, another activity with middle schoolers. A lot of these schools are actually now happening in elementary level schools and middle schools. So what are we doing for all of these kids to be that engaged is changing the classroom so they really go around the students and around collaboration. And that is something that we should be doing for here at the institution. And just lastly, I just want to say that form should always follow function, always. And it is in our best interest to not forget that teaching and learning should shape the building, not the other way around.
I was fortunate enough to actually go to Loyola University in Chicago this summer for a conference on multiple different things, actually, but regarding to students in higher education. And we actually got to meet with a professor who made it a goal to not only leave his sitting classroom type style once a week of his 3 classes per week, but at the same point to make it a different location around campus where there was active learning areas that they could go. And one of the examples of which I was really excited and interested in was the brand new library that they have there, in which they have these classrooms where classes can actually go there and use it for different functions. But at the same point, the entire library, it was kind of interesting concept, I'm not advocating for this in any way, didn't have a single physical book in it. And which was extremely interesting because it's probably larger than our library here, but at the same point, it was just all active learning spaces and places that they could go and study and interact, and you rent out iPads and different things for classes as well as free reading and that type of things. And I found it really interesting that he told me he had been teaching the same, just a kind of tuner-based class, tuner-level class for years. And once he started having this function where they left the classroom, they interacted, they different activities once per week, he saw not only attendance rise, he saw interest level rise, questions, people coming to office hours, all these different successful things that he was really proud of, that proved that students were being interactive and engaged in the classroom and out of the classroom, which is just as important as the fact that what they do when they're outside of the classroom regarding your class than they ever had been before. And I think of just kind of the fact that each and every single one of us, like I said earlier, have instant gratification in everything that we do, and with students today, if we don't get that, then we're not going to be fully functioning with it. Just the fact that he got people engaged with his class constantly, not just at in the classroom or on test day or when they were required to be there. So I'm just kind of seeing from the student perspective of professors and faculty really engaging and using these things that they have to offer to them. It's extremely beneficial for each one of us.
All right, third question. Tell us about your vision for the future of active and flexible learning spaces in higher education and at NDSU.
Well, before I go on, I have to go back to the last quote that you put up there, form follows function, because it's exactly what we're talking about today. Because actually the man that created that, his name's Chandler. This is so I can keep my PhD, I always have to give a piece of theory in everything that I do. He went on to say, form does follow function, but once form is in place, it will distort function until function becomes dysfunctional, and only then will we give up the form. And if you think about that addition to the statement, that's exactly what we're talking about today. Are we willing to give up the form of the standard learning environment, the standard class that says it's done in straight rows, they're nailed to the floor in most cases, so that we can't move around? So what's my dream? I would not tell you that I think I want to get rid of every lecture hall. That is not what I'm saying. There are times when we need to share what is commonly referred to as declarative knowledge, the what of a topic. But for you to produce a student who's competent, they actually have to learn 4 types of knowledge to be competent, not just the declarative, but they also have to learn the procedural knowledge, that means how to do something. They have to learn the situational knowledge, when do I do it, and they have to learn the reflective knowledge, why do I do it. Those last 3 are not taught well in, again, the straight rows. Those are taught well when students get to mess around with the learning. Learning's messy. I could teach you the parts of my African drum and you could pass the test. I guarantee you couldn't play the drum though. What I would need there is a drum circle that you all had a drum and we could all bang on our drums and learn. So my dream is that the day will come when most of my spaces are those flexible spaces. In fact, I would argue that's what we built in most of the rooms in Barrie. If you come down, you'll find out the vast majority are on wheels, so we move things around all the time. And it drives the janitors nuts, but we got rid of any signs that say, don't move the tables.
That is awesome. So one of the big things is, I think, the unification or basically collaboration of all the disciplines. And that is something that currently it is not happening in many of our universities. And that is something that we're hoping that to be. I actually envision a lot of cross-disciplinary work is starting to happen that comes from other universities such as Stanford, MIT, that actually are doing this. And I encourage everyone to be part of this movement. Let's just do cross-disciplinary work. And that is something that that we'll all enjoy and actually learn more from everyone. Make our classrooms agile. I think just like Tim has mentioned before, and I really enjoy that aspect of Barrie Hall. I actually teach a class there because of the same scenario. I had to find a classroom where I could teach in that specific environment, and that environment was at Barrie Hall, and I appreciate of all the furniture for it to be able to be configured to whatever my class needs. And so I think one of the bigger things that we should be seeing is actually just the creation of classrooms that literally don't have anything, and then you just bring the furniture that you need for that specific class. You just almost go to a specific closet or whatever, have them, and then just pull out whatever you need for that specific class. Dream big and be brave. I think a lot of what we're having is we have that really scary face in front of us, which is failure. You know, we're not willing to fail. And you know what? If it is not this what we need, we'll discover it. But let's go in there. Let's try to change the classroom, and then let's see if it all works. Fantastic. And so finally, here is a little bit more of that classroom environment that we're mentioning. Just flexible. We're projecting all of the different tables and different individuals of the students' content into the boards. And once again, just to plug our space there, we're doing that here, and we're doing it in Barrie Hall as well. So there are some of these spaces that are not really in the future; they're currently happening.
I was just at dinner with my grandmother last night, and she told me she lauded my generation for a second because we just don't know how to interact with people like she thinks that we should, because we're not in a place where we're encouraged to talk to one another and interact. And she says, you're going to be working with these people for the rest of your life, but your generation just doesn't know how to do that. And I said, well, it kind of made me think when I was talking about this a little bit. What am I encouraged to do in college that helps me interact with people? And I think of student involvement, in organizations. I think of the social scene. And the first thing that didn't come to mind was the classroom experience when it comes to human interaction involvement. I think when you compare your classroom experience to much like a movie theater setup, you're just not going to have the exact same experience that you're going to have in the workplace. And we're here getting at higher education to be better in the workplace in the future, be better human beings. And I think if we're not encouraging that in the classroom, which is the fundamental reason why we're here, is to learn and as well as interact with people we're going to be interacting with for the rest of our lives, I think we're doing something wrong. So I think something that we can encourage in the future, and once again, I'm with Dr. Peterson, I'm not saying get rid of all lecture halls, but whether it's opportunities like the STEM building or future construction or renovations on campuses, is making sure to build places that are closer to what they're going to be experiencing in the real world, and where students are excited to attend class and excited to go and interact with other students, because as much as we love all of our professors, we want to talk to our fellow classmates as well, because we're all social creatures. So if you go and walk around campus, you very rarely will find a lot of the academic buildings to be the busiest and around, but you'll find areas where students can interact and discuss learning, and like the Memorial Union in the basement here, I'd like to see more classroom spaces built around conversation and built around interaction that will engage the students in and, like I said, outside of the classroom.
Great, we're ready for the discussion portion of this session. But first I'd like to announce that the Group Decision Center is set up in the IDOXA. And whether they have laptops set up where they have software installed that will allow for interactive and anonymous electronic discussion. And the topic is flexible and active learning classrooms, trying to solicit feedback and information, comments, ideas from people regarding that topic. Also, I'll be around after this session and at the Classroom Technology booth in the exhibit hall for further discussion as well. So I'd like to open it up for any discussion. Does anybody have any questions, comments? I'll let you guys talk some more now.
Oh,
They were on a very tight timeline.
yes, we were.
Some touched a little bit on this, but it'd be interesting to hear more about learning spaces that are not directly in the classroom. I think, because I know that I've heard other discussions about all the learning that taking place in the classroom, and how should we be doing learning spaces that aren't necessarily classroom learning spaces.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the things we tried to accomplish in the renovated library. We've built a couple learning spaces that are very flexible down there with some of those same chairs that you've seen a number of times up here that are the little pod chairs and whiteboards that the librarian can set up in a corner. Let's say you have I send 3 students in there that need to learn something on Maslow's needs hierarchy. And she can then pull them aside, and here's how you would go about researching to find that kind of material. Then they can turn right around, walk over to the computers, locate material. We actually have done this assignment. And what they found out was they got 3 different results by searching in 3 different ways, some of which are literally wrong out on the web. The librarian and I had already talked about it, so she knew what she was seeing and pointed out that you can't believe everything that you're seeing that's coming off the internet. Some of it's just flat out wrong. And you've got to be willing to be a good learner and look through and be questioning and stuff, but they went back and forth between those spaces. I actually have one empty space in my building right now, and I actually use those chairs to find out if they would work exactly the way the company describes. I actually moved a class down there. We don't have any projector or anything in the room, but I moved it down there and I lectured to them for a few minutes. I actually just stuck paper on the wall, wrote my notes on that, and then I said, I'd like you to work in small groups. And then later I asked them to work with a partner, and they just figured it out. They just moved the chairs around. That's another space. Now, We're doing that exact same thing with some of the study areas that we've created so that the students, and by the way, I should thank Melissa right now for one of the features that she's adding to some of our study areas, so that our students can come with their laptops and just immediately wirelessly connect to the monitors that are in the room. That's where learning goes on. It doesn't just happen in my classroom. In fact, I would argue most of it doesn't happen in the classroom, it's happening other places. So we've got to be thinking about those kinds of learning spaces. Someday look at what's above our bookstore. I know I talk about Barry a lot, but it's my love. Look at the space above our bookstore and the many different ways that you could study up there. You go and flop in a chair and just read. You can work at a small table. You could go off and work by yourself. All of those are unique ways that we can rearrange, and I look up there sometimes and it's all rearranged in a different way, and I never get upset, and we've never gone up there and put dots on the floor that says you got to put the furniture back this way. That's meaningless. And we need to create more spaces on this campus in all of our classrooms, outside of the classrooms, that have space like that where students can go and congregate and learn, because that's part of the learning. I just don't think we've gotten there. We've tried to do it in Barrie, and there's a few places that have done it. We need those kinds of spaces.
I would like to add, you mentioned the 3 study group rooms where we're installing a software that allows the students to wirelessly project their electronic devices, and that was 3. I did, in collaboration with the library, get funding from the Impact Grant to transform the 10 main campus library study rooms to have the same technologies.
That's great.
And
That's
those
wonderful.
rooms are booked solid without any technology, so they're going to be used all the time for student group work.
That's great.
That is great. Just to address your question, Mark, I think something that we would like to start collaborating with ITS in general, with some of the visions that we have at distance and continuing education. We're actually envisioning some of the areas that currently exist everywhere. There's a lot of open space areas, and with the use of technology to actually implement augmented reality classrooms, virtual classrooms that you can take anywhere in the campus, where we actually have virtual labs but are augmented in front of us. And that would be basically with a lot of the infrastructure that you guys have, whether it is wireless or wireless broadband access, which I think, right now the campus really has a lot of those areas, or those hotspots everywhere, Wi-Fi spots, but I don't know if there is the possibility later on to actually have even more power to that kind of broadband. I think that would be the benefit of having sometimes some of these rooms or some of these spaces, they have no students in there, and that would be a fantastic place to just go and discover more about the specific topic. And just as a question to Barry Hall, a lot of what is happening over there, and it is fantastic. Is that going to be open to every student, hopefully with that kind of collaboration being brought, or is it mostly for business students?
The business faculty get first pick of those rooms because that's where we teach our classes. We will not move out of that building. But once we have taught, once we have filled, then it's open to everybody else. The design room is going to take some time for some of my faculty to get comfortable with that. I'm not going to kid you. Some of them are like, there's no podium? I couldn't teach in that room. I've already heard that. That'll be available to others for a while. Eventually people will get comfortable with it. Actually, I don't want a podium because I want to do exactly how you described it. I want to go and work with the team. So I will have an extra chair in there that I can just roll from table to table, and I go and I sit down and I work with that team. Now, there are moments when I see that there's 3 teams that are having the same problem. Well, wouldn't it make sense that I might want to tell all the teams about it? Then I'll say, hey, let's look at the projectors for a few minutes, and there's 3 in that room so that it doesn't matter where you're sitting, you can see a projector. And I might say, okay, I've thrown together these 2 slides. Yeah, that means that my PowerPoint won't be beautiful all the time, but the learning will be wonderful because I'm teaching to that moment. And so, yes, it will be available. I guess one of my dreams is eventually I'll have to convert another room.
I'll touch on it briefly. Just this made me think of my good friend Eric, who he talks a little bit about his educational experience. He's a construction management major, and he talked about for a semester, one of his earlier years in construction management, where they talked about all these different safety things, and I have zero understanding of this topic, so I'm not going to go into it. But all these different things about what to do in certain situations, and then they didn't leave the class very much, but he could look out the window and he could see construction equipment outside for different things around campus. Or at this time, Menard Hall was very much under construction. So while all this stuff that he's learning about in the classroom is going on literally on campus, they stayed in one area and learned about it there. I think that applies to every field. A change of scenery will engage your students more. Even if it's not necessarily, I'm an econ major, you're not going to have probably as many areas around the campus that is going to specifically pertain to today's lesson. But getting up and standing and moving and interacting is going to just engage the students more. And I think that's something that I've had some professors who are just absolutely incredible at that. That they've been, every single one of them has been my favorite class. I think of COM 100 level class that I took my freshman year. I realized it wasn't a field I wanted to go into, but it still is probably my favorite class I took because Dr. Burns interacted. We went and we engaged, and we went out of the classroom as much as possible. And I think that's just the realities of today's society.
Knowledge of specific applications, but I know there are applications available for anonymous discussion, and they would be types of applications that could be downloaded to the software. I mean, we could certainly try to look more into some suggestions. Well, but they wouldn't go to the classrooms.
Can they use that through the group decision-making center in the classroom?
I think you can bring the group decision center, or you can talk to Jerry Olson, who is in charge. You can bring all of their equipment anywhere, but I don't know that we have that many classroom sets. It would be just one.
I thought you could just use your own system too. So you might be able to use a computer cluster and use the GDC. So talk to Jerry Olson, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It is. You can use it through a web interface, can't you?
Yes, you can use it through a web
So I take
interface.
that back. You could use actually that program. Any other questions, comments? Great. Thank you for coming.